Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Wednesday, December 12th, 2018. I am Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. After the previous session, price held the area that we needed to hold in the ES. I mentioned yesterday in the pre-market video that price needed to hold the 16 to 21 zone in the ES, and price held 26.21 quarter as the low and was able to bounce off that low. That was fairly significant. Now, the other thing that's significant here is in overnight and pre-market trading, price has pushed through the previous session's midpoint and appears poised to continue to drive higher. So again, I mentioned before, after this day that we had here, which was Monday's rejection of the 2-month lows, we could continue to test these zones here between 16 and 21 over the next day or two or even 3. But as long as price continues to hold that 16 zone, we will likely continue to push higher toward the targets that I gave, which is in this zone here and as high as 27.60. So again, this doesn't look bad here in terms of the near-term strength. Again, anything can happen where we could push right through the 16 zone and fail, but as long as price continues to hold that zone, the near-term directional convictions to the upside. And while again, I don't believe that we're just going to run off and break through highs and rally nicely into the sunset, I do think that we will return back toward the 27.50 to 27.60 zone, at least over the next 1 to 5 days, as I mentioned. So again, right now this is holding fairly decently and looks like it's poised for at least another near-term bounce back up. If we take a look at the NQ, you see it's very similar type of price action right now. The NQ also holding its key zone here. We mentioned 6,600, very important. Price came back towards 66.50 yesterday and held that, bounced up, and then today, and overnight and pre-market trading, you can see price pushing through yesterday's midpoint. That is very important in a day like yesterday, to push through that zone and hold, and to continue through it would suggest again that we likely continue back toward the 7K level and perhaps even a little bit higher. But again, remember, we have lower highs here, we do have higher lows that came in, and we have a very clear compression that is developing. At some point we will likely see expansion from this compression, but in the near term we may just see a push back up, maybe back down, and we can hold. And then at the beginning of the year, maybe perhaps we see something happen where we could see expansion from the range. But in the very near term, again, I mentioned 1 to 5 days, we could have a 1 to 5 day move up back towards 7K, and right now it looks poised to continue to do so as long as price remains above that 6,600 level. If we take a look at crude oil, this one's up 2% right now. Crude is up 2%. Not bad to be up, and again, for not being able to drop here after all of these rejections that we've seen up here off the 54s, 54.50s, to not drop to new lows is fairly impressive. It is clearly holding down here right now. We have a sideways range. It's basically trading around the 52.5 53 level, and we have a very clear compression over the last 10 days. So if you look at a 10-day look back and quantify it here, let's bring this up right here and bring it back up to say 10 days like this. You'll see there's clear compression at the lower end of this range here, and that's usually indicative of, obviously, of compression that could lead to expansion down the road. So right here you can see the compression has come in. The volatility at one point on a 10-day range basis was at around 10 handles. Right now it's much lower at about 4 handles. So that tells you that there is clearly some room to run to the upside on a 10-day basis in terms of price range. Now, whether that price range gets released to the upside or downside, we don't know. But I mentioned before, if price can hold above 52.50, right now it's at 52.62. If it can hold above 52.50, we have a shot to at least retest 54.50 and perhaps that 55 level. Nothing happens to the upside unless 55 can really get crossed and held. So that's at least another 2 handles up that could be seen here in the near term, perhaps even a little bit more if we take out the highs. But again, until price can re-establish acceptance above 55s, we're likely continuing to go sideways within this range at best, and still have the potential to go down even more. So right now, above 52.50 in a near-term sense for today suggests that we could see a little bit more upside. Failure to hold 52.50 would rotate this thing back down toward 51.90 and perhaps even lower. All right, let's take a look now at RTY. I mentioned RTY in the previous session with regards to IWM as well. This one has held as well. We had a deep pullback in the previous session and closed right on the midpoint today, again pushing through yesterday's mid, which is very bullish, at least on a day time frame basis. And again, the fact that we are seeing some sort of rejection, or at least some sort of buying pressure here off the lower edge and the LVN of this range, is very good. It's exactly what you would want to see, and that would suggest again that we could return higher from this low. If it remains a strong low, again, we have a very good high probability target zone that takes us up as high as 1540 and as low as about 1510s. So we do have a very good potential to at least rally back toward 1510 if price can continue to hold this general zone, 1430s. So keeping that low is very important. Can we get back above the 1465s? Because right now you see that's the 2-month lows there. Price drops down below it. We have a pivot there yesterday. To drive above that pivot would be very bullish, and again, trapping late bears below that pivot would be indicative of a likely squeeze back toward the 1530. So again, things are setting up, but there's still more that needs to take place in order for these to continue higher. But right now, it looks like it has the potential to push higher here again, as long as price continues to hold and keep that pivot in place. Lastly, let's take a look at gold futures. You'll notice here that gold topped the 1250 zone. This level right here has been a zone that we've been watching between 1245 and 1250. We've had the rounded bottom. We had the very sharp pivot here. We've held and had higher and higher absorption levels. But after getting above and closing above the 1250 zone, it was never really able to establish beyond it, and now we're holding kind of in a narrow range over the last few days. That could suggest that we could see some sort of a pullback, but after taking value bid on a shift down from 1287.60 down to 1226s, by taking it bid here, any pullback would likely also be bid for a continuation higher. So even if we do pull back from these highs, if there's a failure to hold the 1245s, perhaps we drop about 20 handles back toward 1225, and then that could be a buying opportunity for an attempt to push through the 1250s and into the 1280s. So again, even if we see a bit of a pullback here, that could be a buying opportunity down the road. So keep an eye on 1245. Any failure to hold that zone would suggest a bit more pullback. All right, that is it for now. We'll see how this plays out heading into the rest of the session. Good luck, trade well, and I'll see you in the trading room.